Hello everyone, my name is America Josh and welcome to Regular Checkups, my weekly summary of the news for expats in the United States. Every week we're going to have different panelists on who can answer questions about their industries, what they see day to day and the recommendations for the future as for you as expats living in the United States. These aren't going to be deep dives, but each week we'll answer as many questions as we can and hopefully give you some comfort knowing that you've got all the information you need at your fingertips. So that leads me to our first panel for Regular Checkups. I want to thank these three for joining me tonight of the first of many Regular Checkups. It takes a lot to come on to the very first one. We've got Natalia Rojas, the Consular and Passports Officer at the Australian Consulate-General, New York. Matt Baden, a recruiter he's the Director of Permanent Placement Services at Robert Half Technology. And Josh Engstrom is our travel expert from Liberty Travel. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me tonight. So, to define how we're going to do these, every week we're going to divide into three sections. We've got past, present, and future. Past is where we're going to hear about how our panelists have gotten here tonight. So, how their industries have gone over the last few months. Present, we're going to talk about what the panelists are up to now and what they're seeing in their industries at the moment and answer your questions that you've submitted. And in the future, we're going to talk about recommendations and ideas that they've got for you and what their plans are going forward. As I said, these are meant to be punchy. These are meant to be a bit of fun. So thanks again, guys, for joining me. Before we get to any information, though, we do need to flag that this webinar is strictly for informational purposes only, and it is not intended, nor should it be relied upon as a source of legal advice or opinion. As always, it's important that you know this because everyone's situation is different and not everything we say tonight will necessarily apply to you. So, formalities out of the way, tick, tick, tick. Natalia, I'll start with you. Thanks again for joining me from the Australian Consulate-General in New York. How are you? Can you give a little bit of background about how you got here tonight?
Yeah, so my name's Natalia. Like you said, I work for the consulate here in New York. I've done a few different things in my career, but predominantly in the last 4 years, I've been a consular and passports officer. I worked in Los Angeles before moving over the last year to New York. Prior to this, I also worked in Australia for the government there. I was working with Home Affairs, so the old immigration citizenship crew. I did a lot of things there. I processed visas. I worked in the contact centres, complaints. I also managed detainees in immigration detention centres for a little while. Yeah.
Awesome. So then moved over to New York. So you're in the Consulate General, and what's it been like in the last few weeks and months? You know, have you been open and at work all these times? Yours looks a little bit more like an office than mine does in the background of my picture. So what have you been up to, and what's the consulate been up to in the last few weeks?
Yeah, so we've been open the entire time, basically, since the pandemic. Obviously, the volumes of people coming in have changed. At the beginning, we had a bit of a rush. We did have a lot of Australians who were concerned as to what was happening, just like the rest of us. We were just, following direction at the time of government. So a lot of Aussies came in to apply for their passports, and most of them have left now. Things have slowed down a little bit. We're still open. We've been open the entire time. We're here Monday through Friday. People can still come in, book their appointments and get their passports.
That's very impressive considering I haven't been at my office since March 13th. So I like it. Matt Baden, how about you? Are you, is that background an office or are you hunkered down at home?
No, that's just my little plan in the background.
Your little from?
It's been my regular webinar Zoom call background for the last couple of weeks. I'm here in New York. Yeah, I'm in the West Village. I came to New York like a lot of us do, with a bit of a dream about coming and testing yourself in the biggest market. I worked in permanent placement for one of Robert Half's competitors first in Sydney, and then I started working for Robert Half and then transferred internally with them. And now I'm the lead of their tech practice here in the city.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit, as a recruiter professionally, what's the industry been like sort of leading up to this point? How's it been in the last few weeks and months?
Yeah, it's been pretty challenging. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I would say it's probably, I started recruiting at the back end of the GFC, and it's much worse than that. I haven't seen it like this, but I would say, save for the last couple of weeks, it started to get a little bit better. And so I think across the industry, we're starting to see some green shoots, and that leaves people with some kind of positive feelings about where things are going.
Okay. That's, reassuring start to tonight, which is great. Josh, Love your name. It's really working for you. In your promo picture, when I was looking for pictures of you, you have brown hair, a huge beard, and now you are sitting here with pink hair and no beard. So how's isolation treating you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And as you can see, I went through the obligatory stages of isolation. First stage was no access to my usual hairdresser or my usual barber. Next stage was taking it into your own hands. And stage 3 was let's get creative. If there's ever a time I can have pink hair, it's probably now. So why not?
I like it. So you're joining us from Liberty Travel as our travel expert. What would you, just so people understand what you'd normally be doing day to day, what would be your work?
That's good. So prior to the crisis, I suppose we were heading into our busiest time of year. So spring is usually, in North America anyway, is our busiest time of people booking for summer and autumn travel. So we were gearing up for actually our busiest kind of time of year, and it was going to be a bumper year. So usually at this time of year, I'd be, handling a steady stream of inquiry, helping sort out their questions and what they have, where they want to go, and all of that kind of thing. And then also doing much of the booking and ticketing and getting all of that stuff ready. So I suppose this whole crisis has kind of flipped that all in reverse now. I spend most of my days helping clients who had already booked rather than helping new clients to book their new trips. So that's what I spend most of my day doing.
No, I can imagine. And so, I mean, that's a perfect sort of segue from past to present is sort of, we've seen that obviously, as you just said, the lead up to now has been pretty rocky and it's really changed your industry and your job day to day. We're seeing a bit of confusion about flights at the moment and, what people should be doing. And we've had some people get in touch who might have had flights booked and might have flights booked for the coming weeks and months. Can you give us a bit of a picture for what the situation is right now with flights in and out of the United States?
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose when we're talking about past, present and future, that past is kind of important at this stage because around the beginning, the crisis really started hitting travel in North America around the end of February. By early March, it had become kind of full meltdown, a series of meltdowns in terms of flights being grounded, borders being shut. So I suppose the most important distinction to look at to begin with when you're looking at your travel plans and what's going on is when did you book your ticket? Generally speaking, anything booked before around early March has different rules now compared to anything booked after that early March. So that's an important distinction for people with tickets that they've got currently booked to make sure that they're aware of what window they were in. Did they book prior to the crisis or have they booked something now?
Okay. So in terms of, just as a broad speaking, what's better? Is it better to have booked before or better to have booked after?
I suppose that's a tricky question just because I suppose what the airlines are doing right now is they're making it super flexible. Okay. They've all introduced their peace of mind policies. So trying to get people to, book their flights for the autumn or for Christmas or whatnot. Just when the crisis hit, end of February, early March, it was all really confusing. So I'm working in the front line, so I can just imagine what the public thought about what was going on. Airlines were literally changing their policies hourly. So we'd get messages saying, this is happening with this airline right now, and then the next day it would be totally different.
Okay. So in terms of flights right now, if we can sort of quickly buzz through the airlines, United and American, are they still flying right now?
American, no. Putting into the context of going to Australia, American Airlines, no. The only airline going to Australia at the moment from the US direct to Australia is United. There's various other carriers that transit other nations, the Middle East or New Zealand. I definitely advise all my clients to take the most direct route as possible. And at the moment, that's United.
Okay. I know a lot of people would be wondering, Virgin Australia obviously went into voluntary administration. I think I've lost track of time, but I think it was last week or maybe the week before.
Yeah.
What's the situation with people who might have had flights booked with Virgin? I know they were listed as one of the sort of airlines to look at sort of a few months ago.
Yeah, there's still a lot of confusion going around there. I hear different things from different clients with their Virgin Australia flights. Some people are saying that when they log into their online account with Virgin Australia, that they can still see their flight traveling as normal. So in this instance, if your flight is still going as normal, my advice to people is to wait until the airline contacts you to tell you that the flight is cancelled. That would be the first step, because you can only really understand what your next step is going to be when you understand what is happening with what you've already booked. So that would be my first piece of advice. And then the second piece of advice would be that the airline hasn't actually folded. So they're just going through a series of steps to make sure that they remain liquid as a company and that they, continue to have cash. So the future of Virgin Australia at the moment seems somewhat bright. I know that there's a lot of talk about up to 10 different interested buyers looking to buy the airline. But at the moment, unfortunately, particularly if you've got Virgin Australia flights for May, I would definitely recommend looking at some alternatives if you really needed to get home, because there's a really good chance that those flights won't be happening.
Okay. And then, so we've got Qantas as well. They're not flying to the US between Australia at the moment, or?
No.
Okay.
So Qantas have had a series of flights that have now ended. And the good news is that Qantas are starting again from June 1. There just won't be any flights in May with Qantas for people that wanted to fly home with Qantas.
Okay. So broadly, looking at all of the brands, and just to repeat the advice that you gave before, if people are looking for refunds or they're a bit concerned, what they should basically be doing is waiting for the airline to reach out to them. Is that sort of the best advice, as opposed to like actively cancelling?
Yeah, I suppose there'd be two kind of scenarios there. So people who have booked, I suppose there's three. People who have booked themselves with the airline direct, the airline will have their email address and phone number and will be contacting them if their flight has been cancelled. So that's step one, I suppose. That's one way.
Yep, option one.
If you've booked through a third party, an online travel agent, you've used Skyscanner and then got, bounced to some other random website, that certainly makes it trickier, especially if the flight has been cancelled and getting refunds and whatnot. Or thirdly, if they booked with an agent, a human agent like myself, we have a direct line of communication between the airline and ourselves as agents. So we get live updates about your flights 24/7 from the airline. So if there has been a change or a cancellation from your flight, your human travel agent will be in touch. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Matt, that leads me, all this talk of, making sure that people have their bases covered and things. We saw some pretty severe unemployment numbers come out today in the United States.
I think I read 30 million, right?
I think it was, 30 million in the last 6 weeks have filed for unemployment across the US, which it's staggering. And I know you were sort of saying it's starting to look a bit greener. Do you want to sort of go into a little bit more detail? What does it look like for your day-to-day as a recruiter? How are things looking and how are things feeling right now?
Yeah, that's a good question, Josh. I think just to give people like a wide-on view of like how a normal recruiter would approach their day, you would spend half your day, trying to seek out new companies to work with, call it pure business development, trying to grow your network of companies you work with. And then you would spend the other half of your day, literally a 50-50 split, trying to find candidates for the open positions that you have. Across our business, we're more like 80-20, 90-10 right now, to give you an understanding as to just how focused we are to trying to find new opportunities to work with, which means the job is, it's a lot more of it feels a little bit like I'm working on a dialer right now is would be the way I describe it. It's hard as well, because you have to be super sensitive to the fact that you could be speaking to somebody that's lost somebody from COVID, or they might have a vacancy because God forbid somebody died. You have to be really sensitive about that. But I think what that tells you is that, we're trying to find new places in the market to be able to place good candidates. Secondary to that, there's more available candidates that they can get themselves, which is a challenge because people are unemployed. So using agencies isn't always the way that people are going to choose to go immediately. But the last bit, which is I think maybe the positive bit, is that depending on the industry that you're in, there's definitely some opportunities. We've seen a lot of opportunities, and I wrote a few down, but education is one. Anything that provides like some kind of online platform. So I think things like e-commerce and logistics and supply chain have been incredibly busy. And also within finance, but more specifically within mortgage broking, we found a lot of our clients that literally can't hire enough people as quickly as they can. So one of my other big clients is a company called Peloton, which I don't know if any of you have ever been on a Peloton bike before, but they're literally hiring people hand over fist. So there are some pockets of the market that are really strong, but then there are some places like, hospitality clients as an obvious example.
Devastating.
The bloodbath, but yeah, so that's kind of like an overall, is that a kind of,
yeah, no, that's perfect. I think that gives a bit of a grounding for people to understand. It sounds very dire when you watch the news, and I think sort of people want a bit of a grasp on, is that the real picture, and is that what it actually looks like on the ground?
Yeah, I literally just placed somebody 2 minutes before the call started. So
yeah, right.
I was so late to it because I was like, okay, we're accepting, we're good to go. And the job's placed. And look, it's not like a well-known company. It's not like only a top company, whatever. It's just a medium-sized startup looking for somebody. They're desperate for the right people. And I think some companies are looking as an opportunity to bring in some real top talent from other companies that have unfortunately been let go.
Yep. Okay. Natalia, the consulate, being an essential service, has been, as you mentioned before, you've been open this entire time. So is it like any other day, or, you said that numbers are down a little bit. What should people know if they're looking for support from the consulate right now?
Yeah, so basically, like I mentioned, we've been open. So if people want to head to our website and book an appointment, they can come in. Obviously, we're working with reduced staffing at the moment and reduced hours, but that shouldn't reflect in what's available publicly, because we've had spots available every day.
Okay, awesome. So if I am in desperate need, one of the services that obviously people would use the consulate for regularly is a passport. And if I do need one in an emergency, what is the process? What are my options for an emergency passport right now?
So you can always come in person to get your emergency passport. We can print them within 24 to 48 hours. I've even printed several on the day of. So we've had a few people come in that have needed to leave that day. Yeah, it's nothing that we promote so much, just because, there's certain checks that we need to do, but it can be done most of the time.
Okay. And what's the process if somebody wants to, they just sort of go online to the consulate's website and it's got the instructions for an emergency passport there, or?
It's all there, and you're welcome to call us as well for all the step-by-step of what you need to do. But also, if you don't want to come in person, we have temporary processes in place. So if you wanted to mail in your application, you could also do that. So a lot of people are choosing, to stay at home, as they should. So if you wanted to mail in your application and you do have evidence that you are traveling within the next 3 weeks, you could do it by post. So that's also an option for an emergency passport.
Awesome. Is that the same for a full passport if I wanted to renew my full 10-year passport?
Good question. It's not. We've been asked that a few times. So just because our passport process is one of the most secure in the world, we actually don't offer the full passport when we don't see someone face to face. Obviously, there are exceptional circumstances. So if you're here, you're stuck, and you need to renew your passport for XYZ reason, and you definitely need that 10-year full passport, which is the case for, I guess, some people renewing their visa here or renewing their green card or whatever, you can put your case forward if you can't come in or you don't want to come in, and we'll forward that to Canberra for approval. But, where possible, come in if you can.
Okay. One of the parts you need for a passport is a photo, and it's one of the questions that I get asked, and I'm sure you get asked quite often. How do people go about getting a photo now, especially a lot of the venues are closed to get them?
Yeah, so basically all the photographers around us and that we recommend, they're all shut. And we don't like people going to pharmacies because pharmacies are inconsistent, photo quality isn't great. So what we're recommending at the moment is people there's two options. You can head to a website called passportphotonow.com. You send them your photo by email. They can crop it to the size that we need, and then they'll post it out to you. The second option is if you come into the consulate, you can actually take your own photo with your phone. There's instructions on our website on what we're looking for. It does sound a little bit complicated, but it isn't. So long as you can take a photo with a white plain background or light gray, just something plain, neutral expression, no smiling, mouth closed. What you can do is actually email us that photo when you come in. We can crop it and we can print it on the spot.
Awesome. That's much easier than I
Yeah.
think a lot of people realise.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention for anyone who needs a photo to be endorsed by a guarantor before they come in, you can actually still get your pharmacy photo and get that endorsed. And the good quality photo that you can take yourself, we can print here as well. So you'll have two different photos, but that's fine.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. To segue out of that very poorly, I've written a bit about on America Josh about border closures in Australia. So to look right now at the situation in Australia and people trying to leave, I know there are restrictions in place and there's a little bit of confusion about what exactly that means. Can you explain the process of, if I do go back to Australia, what's required if I did want to return to the States?
To the States. So that's something that's managed obviously by the Department of Citizenship and Border Protection of the States. There's no ban for Australians coming back to the States now. There's no bans on any visas. So long as you're coming from Australia, the ban applies to certain countries in Europe and Asia. So when you're coming back, the Department of Home Affairs in Australia doesn't want Australians traveling right now, of course. So there is a list on the Home Affairs website with what's considered an essential travel. But if you ordinarily reside overseas, that you don't count as part of that group. So if you were living here for a long time and then you wanted to go back to Australia, wait it out, renew your visa, and then come back, so long as you can prove that you were living here, you've got utility bills, rental agreement, that sort of thing, you should be fine. Okay.
So yeah, the essential travel is only required if you don't reside overseas. If you can prove that you reside overseas, you're completely fine. Well, you should be fine.
And we haven't had any feedback from people who had any issues coming back. We've already had a few people who've left during this time and come back. So.
Okay, and that's the Department of Home Affairs is the one that they should be looking to for further information if they want to clarify that.
Yeah, and I can share that link with you as well.
Fantastic. So we'll circulate some links at the end of this in an email, which has some feedback and all sorts of information for everyone. Josh, that's probably a good segue. In terms of actually getting back to Australia, what are we thinking that it's going to look like in the sort of coming months and heading further into the future? I know we're sort of talking about right about now, but what's it looking like for flights to and from the US? Do we have any dates that we can keep in mind?
At the moment, it's very limited. So that United flight via San Francisco is the only way that you can pretty much get back to Sydney. In terms of Brisbane and Melbourne and Perth, there's still other routes that you can take. There is the Middle East route if you were going over to Western Australia. So Qatar Airways are still flying from New York to Doha to Perth. So that's still able to be taken. And then you've also got Air New Zealand coming from Houston as well. So it's really limited. Like particularly a classic example is the route from Sydney to Melbourne. It's one of the busiest and one of the most profitable routes in the world. And at the moment, I was looking at some availability and they had 3 flights a day.
Yeah, right.
So to put that into perspective, on a normal time period, we would have up to 30 to 40 flights a day between Sydney and Melbourne. So it's really limited. In terms of the short term, I think we're just in a bit of a bump at the moment. This next coming month of May is still going to be very limited. But we can see as we move into June and as we move into the summer that airlines are starting to pick up their pace again. So Qantas is starting to fly again from New York from June 1. So that's great for New York, Aussies in New York. We love catching that Qantas flight. So that's going to immediately make people start feeling better about travel, knowing that your national carrier is flying from the country that you live in. So that's a big step, I think. As we move into August, September, October,
Christmas,
the very first thing that's going to come up and back online is going to be your domestic travel here in the United States and domestic travel in Australia. International travel, I would say by Christmas, I could be fairly certain in saying that you're not going to have a problem getting home for Christmas. Whether we still have the quarantine when we land for 2 weeks, that's something that people really need to be on top of, because obviously if you're only going home for 3 weeks and you have to spend 2 of those weeks in quarantine, that's really going to put a bummer on your Christmas holiday trip. So just keep up to date with what the quarantine rules are. And then I imagine that we're going to be back to normal, I would say, by this time next year. I'm hoping.
Yeah, okay. That's probably a perfect segue back to Natalia about and I know this is a bit of a crystal ball question, as Josh said, but do we know anything about, what are the requirements for that quarantine, and is that for everyone, and do we have any end dates that we know at the moment? Natalia? Whoop,
I can't see a camera there.
I feel like
that's right. That's right. So that's right, Josh. No, thank you. But it is something that we need to take into consideration, because I think it's important that we know whether or not, like, as much as there might be a flight, we need to know the bigger picture. We need to make sure that we're looking at
the hardest thing for people as well has just been the not knowing what's going on, and then also just the general panic around all of the borders shutting and stuff. So I think as we move throughout the year and we see particularly a few of those milestones be hit, like they come up with a treatment for the virus, there's going to be a staged and staggered approach. So I think once the borders start opening up, I think it'll be, so many people can't wait to get out and travel again.
Yeah. Okay. Matt, that's a good point. If people are looking to move to the States, what do you sort of foresee as being the dates? We were just talking about September and Christmas and this time next year with Josh. What do you think in terms of jobs and in terms of actually feasibly thinking about moving here? What's your crystal ball moment?
Yeah, I think, as I said to you before, I just saw Natalia come back online, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think for people if they're joining from Australia or thinking like, what am I going to do if you've lost your job here or whatever, I think for Australians, at least in New York, I can kind of see that end of Q3, start of Q4 being the time where things are going to start to return to a bit of normality. At the end of the day, there's 30 million Americans out of work. And like, if I've learned anything about placing Australians here, not that I only exclusively place Australians, but I have placed some, is that they will hire an American first if they can. And we just have to appreciate that's going to be the situation that companies approach. And so I think naturally, with so much unemployment, a bit of that will bounce back where, when restaurants start opening, all of a sudden, like a lot of that 30 million will evaporate, like it'll start to get back to normality. But I can't see that being before maybe a September time. Just from what I do, I speak to a lot of Aussies who want to move here from home to New York. And my advice has been just wait it out. Just wait it out. If you've got a job back home, I know it may not sound fun right now and you really want to get your New York dream started. Trust me, I get it when I hear people say that, but it's not the New York dream as we all know it right now. And there's no need to rush into anything. Hold what you have right now. And then, as you get to September, you may start to see that kick. It'll be busy with hiring. If it does start to show that it's right back to normal, then I would expect there to be a lot of hiring in Q4 in the lead up to Christmas. But then at the start of next year, I think, from everything that people within our organization are talking about at Robert Half, we expect the start of next year to be incredibly busy because people will be trying to make up for lost ground.
Okay. No, that's good to know. I mean, and I've said the same thing. I wrote an article, I think about a week ago, that talked about, save your dream, save some money and save it up for another, half a year. And you're going to have a better time with more savings than you would potentially trying to battle it out, as you said, with a lot of people here who are in a really tough position themselves. So it's difficult to come here and compete.
It's a better exchange rate too. So, that's to look forward to.
No, absolutely. Natalia, do we have you back?
Yes, you do. Sorry.
Awesome. Hello. No, that's all right. We were just talking about flights and going back to Australia and what exactly is available. I was wondering if you could use a crystal ball for a moment and tell us, do we know anything about we understand that there's 2 weeks quarantine in hotels at the moment in Australia. Do we have any idea on what that's looking like going into the future, heading into, the holiday months in Australia, for example?
No, I wish that would help me as well, actually, because I want to go back home for Christmas. But no, there's a little bit of misconception that we might know these things before they're released, but actually in reality, we don't. When these things get announced by the Prime Minister, we all find out at the same time. I don't see it changing anytime soon, but we haven't heard either way. So they still apply, and I'd be prepared for those 2 weeks to still apply for a little while.
And just to confirm with everyone, at the moment, if you fly back to Australia, you don't have any options. Wherever you land, wherever it is that you land, you are taken to a space, and that is for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
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 Fantastic. Well, we're at 6:35, so I wanted to make sure that we kept this good and punchy. But thank you all very much. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to add before we finish up? No,
I never just briefly just wanted to let people know, just in terms of booking flights now. We made that distinction about that it was quite tricky at the beginning of the crisis, but we've come a long way from there now. A lot of airlines have come to the table and come to the party now, offering a lot of flexibility for their flights. So what that means, for example, if we use the United flight via San Francisco back to Sydney, you could book that flight today, and then say you wanted to leave in 3 weeks' time because you'd lost your job. At the moment, United have flexibility for anything to change any booking you've made up until the 31st of May right now. So at the moment, for example, you could book your flight in 2 weeks' time. You actually get a job. You know, you thought you had to go home because you lost your job. Something happens, a miracle happens, you find another job, you're going to stay. United will let you change that flight now right up until, I think at latest, it was August 2021. So in terms of, it's a very tricky time to travel at the moment, but in terms of the flexibility that a lot of the airlines are offering now, it's actually a really good time to book now. Because you've never had that opportunity. Usually to get the flexibility on a ticket, you would have to buy a fully flex ticket, which can sometimes be as much as a business class ticket, just in economy. At the moment, you essentially get a fully flex ticket, and the prices at the moment are incredibly low. So you're getting the flexibility and a low price. And that's never happened in the 8 years that I've worked at Flight Centre, to have both of those at the same time.
Okay, fantastic. And just so everyone knows, we will be sharing the contact details of everyone who's speaking today so that you can follow up and ask any follow-up questions. Thank you, Josh, Matt, Natalia, very much for joining us, and thanks everyone for watching. We really hope that we've answered at least some of the questions. I know that there were some questions submitted on topics that we weren't addressing tonight. Next week, Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, we will be talking with a US immigration attorney to talk about some legal issues on that side. We'll be talking again about jobs, but over on the West Coast to get a bit of a perspective. And we'll also be touching base with some people who are in Australia and in those quarantines and hotels to get a bit of an understanding from a first person to understand exactly what's involved and what you should know if you are really planning to head back to Australia. There's information on my website at americajosh.com/corona. I've got information that I update almost daily, and there'll be a feed of this if you wanted to recap on anything that you've learned. And so everyone knows, a bit of a lighter-hearted, I also host Friday Night Drinks tomorrow night from 5:30 Eastern. I do trivia. You can come and join and meet some new friends and little breakout groups and have a bit of a debrief and a chat with people outside your own apartment and home. So we'll send you some feedback. We'll send you some emails. You can let us know what you thought. If you want to be on a panel, let me know in that form. But thank you very much, everyone, for watching. And thanks again to the panel for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for putting it together, Josh.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.